So, second video of the day, and you'll notice sometimes I will post a string of videos in one day, and that's usually because I'm home alone, which I'm really not home alone very often. So, when I am, I like to take advantage of the time that I have because it's when I feel most comfortable making videos and knowing that I won't be interrupted. And for those who are new, I have cerebral palsy and I have suffered from social anxiety and depression my entire life. I was also recently diagnosed with inattentive ADHD, and this channel is really it's a life vlog about everything that has to do with my life, from my career goals of becoming a speech and language pathologist to being a mom and dealing with mental health issues and trying to better my mental health, trying different medications and going to therapy and whatnot. And that being said, I am a full-time undergraduate college student, currently in the second semester of my senior year, working on my bachelor's degree in speech and language pathology with a minor in psychology. And the goal is ultimately to become a speech therapist. And in order to do that, I do also have to get my master's degree. So I just recently finished applying to grad school about a week ago. And so I'm hoping to hear back in about a month or two. Fingers crossed for that because SLP grad school is very, very competitive. Also, I work part-time as a reading specialist, and I also volunteer part-time as a tutor. Recently, I started working with a girl who is a freshman in high school, and today was my second session with her. And my first session with her was last week, so we meet once a week through Zoom because of COVID and everything going on. And during my first session, I typically introduce myself to the parents, and they will talk to me, and I'll get to know the student, and they'll let me know kind of, their goals and what they want to improve on and whatnot. And this particular student that I just started working with, she is taking Spanish, and she's not a native Spanish speaker. She is in Spanish classes, hoping to learn Spanish, and she was talking about how she does struggle a bit with Spanish, and I'm a native Spanish speaker, so I told her I could help her with that. And her mom pointed out that she's very shy when it comes to kind of speaking up, especially in class when she's called on. And when she gets called on, like to read or answer questions, she tends to get very shy. And the girl even told me herself that she gets very nervous and that she wants to work on kind of overcoming that. And it was kind of ironic because it was like I was seeing myself when I was her age, and even now because I still struggle a lot with social anxiety. Um, but I'm almost 32, and over the years, I've learned some techniques that have helped me alleviate some of that anxiety and kind of push past it so that I can get things done and do what I have to do. And so I thought I would kind of make a mini series within my channel specifically for uh, I guess, tips and tricks that have helped me over the years manage my anxiety, not necessarily cure it or overcome it. I'm not even sure if it's possible to cure anxiety. I really strongly believe that there is a strong genetic component to it. That's not to say that you can't work on your mental health or that you'll never be able to, I guess, decrease your level of anxiety. But I do believe that some people are just naturally more anxious than others, just like some people are more introverted than others. And I feel that a lot of that is kind of genetic. That being said, today is my first video, I guess, kind of talking about those little tips and tricks that have helped me over the years. And in my early 20s and my teenage years, my anxiety was a lot worse because, like I said, I do have cerebral palsy, so I suffered a lot from particularly bullying, kids constantly making fun of me because of the way that I walked. And I was a bit of a loner and didn't like social situations, so I tended to kind of isolate myself a lot. Um, And part of that comes from constantly being made fun of because of something like cerebral palsy, which is something that I was born with and I really have no control over, right? And so I really feel like all the anxiety kind of built up over the years, from lived experiences, and it's partly genetic and whatnot. But I can say with certainty that my anxiety has diminished over the years and that I've learned techniques that have helped me manage it. And one of those is to be the first one to raise my hand to volunteer to answer a question or to give a presentation, um, to the class, when it's assigned. And I know that it sounds kind of counterintuitive because if you're suffering from crippling social anxiety, like what makes you think that you would want to, right? Like why would I think that you would want to raise your hand to volunteer for something? And the logic behind that, sorry, my printer is, I guess, like loading and it's like being really noisy, so I'll give it a second because it's probably hard to hear me over the printer. Um, the logic behind that is, at least for me, a lot of the anxiety that I experience when I have to give a presentation or when we're reading out loud or when the teacher's calling on people to answer questions is not knowing when I'm going to be next. I don't know if I'm going to be called next, not knowing if I'm going to be ready to give my presentation. And then I also have inattentive ADHD. So I remember, particularly in middle school, I would space out a lot. And then sometimes we would be like reading in the middle of class, and the teacher would make like one student read one paragraph and then call on someone else. And me being the spacey person that I was, whenever I would get called on, I would just be like, I don't know where we are, what page are we in? And of course, that would just amp up my anxiety times 1,000 because then I would just feel really dumb, um, not knowing where I had to start reading. And over the past couple of years, I've done a lot of self exposure therapy, kind of exposing myself to the things that scare me. Like I joined a piano class. I had to give a piano recital at the end of the class at the community college that I was at previously. And I was scared shitless, pardon my language, but I was shitting bricks. And I played For Elise by Beethoven, and my hands were trembling the entire time. And why would I put myself through that? Well, because I feel like if I can prove to myself that I can give a recital in front of class, it's no big deal to answer a question, when I'm called on. And so that's another thing that has kind of helped me, is exposing myself to really scary situations and then making it through those situations, even if I'm, peeing my pants and my hands were shaking the entire time, even if I felt like I was making a fool out of myself, um, is I made it through. And that's the point. So that's another thing that you can try. But really, I would encourage you to start small and start by being the first one to maybe volunteer to answer a question in class, even if you don't know if you have the right answer. In my experience, professors and teachers really appreciate students that kind of take the initiative and at least try. And you might feel like an idiot afterwards if you get the answer wrong, but that's not what this is about. This is about not having the answers right all the time, but it's about kind of pushing past your fears and showing yourself that you can do something despite that nagging fight or flight feeling, that voice in the back of your head, and that adrenaline telling you, put your hand down because you're going to make a fool of yourself. You don't know what you're talking about. You sound so stupid. Like I have been through that and I still experience that, but I have learned to kind of ignore it and push past it just long enough to do what I have to do. And also, so over the past couple of years that I've been practicing this, being the first one to volunteer to give a presentation, I've noticed that since I volunteer myself a lot and I answer questions a lot, if there's a particular day during the week where I don't feel like participating or being particularly present in the class, like I'm there, but I don't get called on because the teacher or the professor already knows that overall I'm pretty active in the class and they're used to hearing from me. And so what they want to do is they want to not necessarily pick on, the quiet ones, but they want to hear from other people, maybe in the back of the room, other people that don't kind of raise their hand or volunteer to speak very often. And that's the person that I was all throughout elementary and middle school and most of high school. Really, it wasn't until I started at community college that I started kind of getting past that a little bit. And it's not going to be easy, and you're probably going to be shitting bricks, but just try it. Just give it a couple of tries. I still blush sometimes when I'm talking, when I'm trying to answer a question, when I'm trying to talk to a professor, but I do it anyway. Um, I push past that. I feel that my face is hot red a lot of the time. And there's that voice in the back of my head that says, like, okay, why are you blushing? Like, you look so stupid right now. But I say what I have to say, even with a shaky voice. The point is just doing it. And then you'll notice that it gets easier with time. You won't be called on very often because you usually volunteer. So you have that power. You give yourself that power back of knowing when you want to be the one to speak. Like, okay, I'm ready to speak now. Let me raise my hand. Or I want to be the first one to present, so I'm going to be the first one to sign up um, for the presentation. And then another thing, as far as projects and presentations and being one of the first ones to go, is that the expectations aren't so high because the teachers haven't really seen anybody present. And just the fact that you were the first one or one of the first ones to volunteer, that in itself is something that most people aren't willing to do. And teachers will give you credit for that. And you kind of set the bar. I was the first one to go up and present, and more often than not, you'll get a decent grade. Um, and because the longer that you wait, the more that the teacher has to the more examples and the more presentations that they've heard before yours comes up, and the more that they kind of have to grade you against, if that makes sense. Um, so yeah, those are like three things, I guess. Raise your hand so that you give yourself that power back of knowing when you want to be called on. Be the first one to present if it's possible. Sign up to be the first one to give a presentation, even if you feel like you might not be ready. And then I find that this really alleviates the anxiety a bit because actually sitting there and waiting to present and watching other people present, the more time that goes by, at least for me, my anxiety kind of builds up more and more just by sitting there and waiting, like, oh my God, four more people and then it's my turn. Whereas if I just get it over the first day, like that's it. I don't have to worry about it anymore. Sorry, I'm rambling now. So yeah, raise your hand whenever you can to kind of answer questions or give opinions, even if you're not sure if you have the right answer. Sign up to be the first one or one of the first people to present during projects and class presentations. And also do things that seem, I guess, scary, things that you think are going to be anxiety provoking. You don't necessarily have to start at like giving a piano recital, or like afterwards I even took a voice class where I had to sing like a song, perform in front of the class and sing by myself. And that was really, really scary. And I had a panic attack during one of my recitals. So I'm not necessarily suggesting that if you're not ready for that, that you kind of throw yourself into something that extreme, but maybe start smaller, smaller than that. Like, what is something that is kind of scary, but it's doable as of this point in time, even if it's just going up to a cashier and, when they're checking out your items or whatever, saying, having like a short conversation with them, or saying, how are you, or whatever it is, even something like that. If that is extremely anxiety provoking for you, then even go smaller than that. Take small steps, one small step at a time, small and doable steps, and then eventually you'll be able to do that one big thing that you never thought that you could do. So anyway, I hope that this was helpful to someone out there. Let me know down below if you have any questions or comments, and I will be back.